All right, so I'm about to go into Maya. It's 12:18. And we're going to get started in Maya as far as just importing and getting everything set up. We'll actually go through full retopology next class. But I want to talk about ordered topology with you guys and what that even means. Because there's different types of ordered topology. It's not just for rigging for animation or preparing a mesh to be rigged for animation. But there's ordered topology just for ZBrush, just so that we can sculpt well. And I want to show you some examples of what that means. So last looks. I'm going to bring this out now. Questions or concerns about your characters before we end up leaving ZBrush? All right, you guys are good. I'm going to move forward. So we talked about how the limbs should be positioned when we bring this into Maya for retopology. And I was telling you need to find a neutral state for your creature. So I've seen this done a few different ways. One of the animators that I work with, he's sort of old school. He likes to see, let me give you an example. Step down to my lowest. And before I do this, let's go ahead and polygroup these limbs to make it easy to select them. Sorry, I'm backpedaling a little bit. Try and get as clean a selection when you're doing this, by the way, as you can. You don't want like single stray polys. Let's hit Control W now to polygroup that. I think I see a nice edge I can follow there. Let's grab a little bit more here than what I need. Let's invert that selection. Holding down Control and Shift with the lasso on, I am getting rid of these poly rings. I think I want all the way up to there. That's what I'm looking at. Control Shift and Alt. This is one bit of glitchiness inside of ZBrush that I've never really been able to go, okay, I'm okay with this. I can work around this. It's like the way that the selection projects. It's kind of the way that, I don't know, just the projection across from side to side happens. I always recommended that when we had symmetry on inside of ZBrush, like when I was in development meetings, that we look at those projections canceling each other out, right? So that you wouldn't get, this slicing in this way. So when you're deselecting something, it deselects the lower portion of the leg. But priorities and features, I guess. So Let's go into the head too. Might as well. Control-Shift-X. Control-Shift-Tap on that edge right there. Control-W. Mouth, I'm okay with where it's at. Position of the head, I can mask that out. No problem. All right, so let's go to the wings first. We want no bend in the wing. Want to straight line as much as possible right there. Then down at the base. Let's rotate the entire wing so it's straight out side of the body. There we go. From the front, we want them level. So the idea being that, and we'll be looking at this for all the limbs, we look at the extremity of the motion, right? So the extremity of the motion would be somewhere up here, right? And then somewhere down here. So we want to hit in the middle between those two extremities. Back over to the body. Let's go ahead and go into move mode, hold down Control, tap on the hind legs, that way it automatically masks everything else but that poly group. And this one's going to be a little funky because we're going to have to rely on, a lot on just faith in our sculpt as we do this. So I'm going to bring this up. So the extremity would probably be, I don't know, the old school guy that I like to work with sometimes, he's like, no, this is where you want it sitting. And my argument with him is always, well, hey, if this is the extreme, right, and this is the other extreme, they should be sitting at about here. And I've gotten him to work like that, but I know he's still, just out of practice, he likes it like this. So, but I'm going to go ahead and set it into an A pose. And I'm going to do the same thing with the front limbs. That's what I would recommend for you guys. But I'm just saying it because you guys might hear it, you know. You might run across, you know, an animator or a rigger or animator rigger that likes to have everything in a T pose. So move mode, Control tap on the front limbs. Try that again. There we go. And where you want to place this movement is really where the joint sits, right? Where does that limb bend at? And for this one, I need to bring it into the interior a little bit. Let's try that again. And it looks like in my selection's causing an issue because I grabbed that peak. So I'm going to go ahead and mask off the top here a little bit. Let's invert that, soften the mask that way. Let's try rotating again. That's a little better. After retopology in Maya, is there one more sculpting process or is this the final step? No, we'll have one more sculpting, one more pass of the sculpt after this. The reason I only take it to, you know, like somewhere between 30 to 50% at this point so that we have enough to retopologize with, but not so much that we'll end up having to resculpt stuff after reprojection. And I know people have methods for avoiding reprojection inside of ZBrush because it's such an unpopular method, but for me, I get better results with reprojection than anything else. So what I do is I take it to about this stage, bring it into Maya, retopologize it, bring it back, then we go in and detail it. All right. I think there's good. Now let's look at the tail, even though I didn't polygroup it. Let's rotate that up. All right, and that's what we're looking at for the pose for our rig. All right, so now that we have that, I'm going to go ahead and just import these pieces. When I'm looking at these pieces, I need a certain amount of snapping points. And what's a good amount of snapping points for using this as reference mesh inside of Maya? I find that on if we're just doing, like if you're doing a human character or a humanoid character, somewhere in the 300 to 500,000 poly range works really well. The only reason why I wouldn't go higher than that is because you start experiencing some slowdown inside of Maya, and you want to always be able to move quickly and efficiently. Anything that's, you know, like I worked on a project recently, and I had inherited some work from somebody else, and they weren't really good with mesh control inside of ZBrush. So they had modeled these pieces out inside of Maya without thinking about equal poly distribution across the surface. So they took those pieces and they brought them into ZBrush to sculpt out the detail that they wanted on the surface. They subdivided them up to like 16 million polys, and this was in 4R6. This isn't in 4R7, so it's a 32-bit application. It can't utilize more than 4 gigs of RAM. So everything was painful trying to do anything, because it's 16 million polys in a 32-bit application of ZBrush. It's painful. So you want to be mindful of how many polys you're importing. You might be sitting, if you try and import, 1 or 2 million polys inside of Maya, you might experience issues. I can either, so my choice here right now is I can either go Z all, delete all my lower subdivisions, and do it that way, but I'm a little insecure sometimes with Go Z. So what I'm going to do, since we are dealing with such a high poly mesh, I'm going to, let's subdivide the wings up to 145,000. Let's go to the body, and let's step down, 540,000. That's a lot. But my choices are 544 or 136. I'm going to take 544. So I'm going to set these all at the subdivision that I need. And let's not forget the eyeballs. And the eyeballs I don't really need at anything, so I'm going to leave that like it is. Next, before we export as an OBJ, which is what we'll be exporting as, you want to make sure that any tool that you're going to export from, you go down to Export, this little subpalette here, and turn off the Groups function. Having that Groups function on will more than likely result in a mesh that comes in pieces. So you want to make sure that that is turned off. That's for the eyes. Let's go to the body. Turn that off. Let's go to the wings. Export and turn it off. So it has to be turned off per subtool. Now let's go to Subtool and start exporting these pieces. I did forget one thing. The head. The neck is already, it's mostly in its A-pose position, but the head needs to be aligned with the neck. Sorry about that. Let me step back. I had mentioned it earlier on when we were doing our polygroups, and I was like, I'll get back to that. So we have the head, eyes, and tongue that all need to be held together, and I almost forgot to export my tongue. So let's invert that mask, soften it that way, soften it that way. Then let's go where the joint of the cervical vertebra would sit. Let's take off perspective, Let's draw out that transpose line one more time. And I'm going to bring this up so the head is aligned with the neck. Then, to get the tongue in the same position and the eyes, I'm going to go ahead and select the eyes, hit the 1 key to rotate the eyes, do the same thing with the tongue and hit the 1 key, and now everything's in the same position. You want to make sure that when you do that, you're only tapping on the subtool and then hitting the 1 key. You're not rotating or doing anything else, sculpting, whatever. Otherwise, it won't work. So there we go. Now we have our dude in position. And let's see, tongue, export, group options off. Let's go ahead and click on export. And got a 2Maya folder here. Tongue ref. Let's arrow up. Go to the eyes. Eye ref. Arrow up. Let's clear our mask. Let's step up to that 540,000 poly range. Export. Doesn't look like my tongue ref made it in there. Body ref. Let's try that one more time. I'm saving in my transpose master data folder. I'll have to redo. I'll have to copy those over. Tongue ref. I'll just keep on going. Tongue ref. Body ref, and then we need our wings. 145,000 poly should be absolutely fine. All right, let's go ahead and navigate over to our transpose master data folder. Give me just 1 second. If you guys have any questions right now, now's a good time to ask. Simon, if I was wanting a neck sack kind of thing, that could inflate from a skin flap to an air-filled sack. Would I want it to be an inflated mode or a skin flap mode? Animation-wise, I guess a blend shape would be easy animate. Yes. I mean, you could use a blend shape for that. I would say you want it halfway in between, just like you think about the limbs, right? You think about the extremities. You'd want it halfway in between full inflate and halfway in between full deflate. And then I would probably, just for retopology, and then I would sculpt out a blend shape for that, for sure. And I'm having to navigate through like 20 directories to get here. You know what? It's going to be quicker just to re-export it. Forget it. I'll redo it. Serves me right. All right, so desktop, wings, save, export. I'll also have to get those OBJs out of there later on. Body ref. All right, and everything else should be in there.